We've got Rebecca Koffler joining us right now on Florida's Voice. Of course, she, the writer of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. And it's great to hear from her and see her again. Hey, it's Drew. How are you?
Hey, Drew. Great. And you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's so good to see you again. And, as I've been watching everything play out here, and I have to admit, as things have been happening with the peace talks and as things have been going on, and I've been thinking about getting in touch with you to ask you about this, because I think sometimes, when we even start to deal with the particulars of what a peace deal looks like and why isn't Zelensky involved right now, and even some of the quote unquote leadership that's there in Ukraine that we might question, and we'll get to that coming up as well. We kind of have to go back a little bit, and I want to, if you could help me a little bit, because some people ask me, maybe even to ask you, like, how did we even get to this place? Like, going back with Putin and the history of Russia and Ukraine, and how we're in this place to begin with, because it should tell us a lot about what we might expect on the other side of this.
Exactly. Well, the way that we got here is because of the idiotic policies of the Biden administration, and prior to that, the Obama administration, and even prior to that, Bush administration. They were pushing Ukraine to become part of NATO because George Bush launched this policy that used to be top secret. It no longer is, but based on that policy, the United States was taking responsibility for doing everything, and I quote, to democratize Russia's post-Soviet republics so that no single emerging power or a coalition of powers could establish a similar communist regime. And that's when the whole thing started. They pushed Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova. At that point, Putin started telegraphing very strongly that it was a red line for Russia. Why is that? Just like we have the Monroe Doctrine, Russia has its own version of the Monroe Doctrine, according to which Ukraine and all these other former Soviet states, minus the Baltics, minus the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, who are now part of NATO. But those republics, former republics, are considered part of Russia's strategic security perimeter, or the buffer to shield them from NATO. Because every single war that Russia has fought, and during its centuries-old history, it fought hundreds of wars, every single one with the exception of one, in 2013, came from the West. So they're very adamant about it. It's in their military doctrine. And so, but no one listens. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing. During President Trump was not in the first term. He was not in support of that policy. So Putin didn't invade. The minute Biden came to power in 2020, he resumed all of those efforts. And right before Putin's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the Bush administration, specifically Kamala Harris, stated that Ukraine was on a path to membership. Putin tried to negotiate. The Washington establishment refused to negotiate, and Putin invaded. Unfortunately, President Trump inherited a total mess from the Biden administration. He effectively eroded Trump's negotiating policy. And that's why these negotiations are going to be super complex. They're going to be very prolonged. We shouldn't be expecting any quick results. And unfortunately, we don't have that much leverage. So, and President Trump understands that. President Trump understood from the very beginning that war was unwinnable for Ukraine. That's why he's trying to save Ukraine right now. But it looks like he to the Democrats, it will be handing victory to Putin, because Putin will not accept anything less than the requirements he stipulated. And so what's happening is Trump will try, but he will again be accused of being pro-Putin, where in reality, all of these other incompetent people who were ruling Washington for decades, actually, put them in that untenable situation. That's why we are in this mess.
Yeah, because, Rebecca, I don't know if we've talked about this in the past. Maybe we haven't. But one of the things that always comes up when I talk to people about this is, it's crazy to me that from 2022 until this moment, you could hear a pin drop the people around who were asking for peace. Never. You don't hear the media asking for peace talks. You didn't hear Biden talking about peace talks. You didn't hear anybody around Biden's circle asking about peace talks, which brings it to an interesting point, which is it's almost as if they don't, or they didn't, or they like what's happening here. And to your point, like you mentioned, the policies of the past, which, you can go, what is it? You go 2014 and some of what took place there, and the changing of the government, and then the questions about the involvement of the Bidens with Burisma, and I mean, you can get into all different places. So it feels like, am I going into the right place here? Because that's, to me, the biggest story, which is where have the peace talks been? It took Trump to have that come about.
Exactly. Yes, you're very much on the right track. So the key, all of this that you described factors in for the reasons that why we didn't hear, anything about peace. All of a sudden, all we heard is that Putin is a dictator. He can no longer remain in power. Give Ukraine more weapons. And it's not just Democrats; it's Republicans. Lindsey Graham, was the biggest. But those are all wishful thinkers, right? And the two primary reasons why they liked what was going on, the Bush administration, obviously the neocons and even the elites, is this. Biden, Pentagon, and just like the Obama administration, whom I briefed when I was the defense intelligence officer, I briefed Obama's White House multiple times. I briefed combatant command, STRATCOM, EUCOM, NORTHCOM. I briefed NATO in Brussels, Belgium, just a couple of months in the run-up to Putin's invasion of Crimea. And I actually laid out at the classified level what Putin's plans were, what Russia's warfighting strategy was. Nobody wanted to listen. Then I went ahead and I wrote this book, the Putin's Playbook, where I described at the classified level, at the unclassified level, why Putin was doing what he was doing and where we're heading. But the Europeans, as we know, as President Trump pointed out many, many, many times, they never wanted to cough up any money to provide for their own security, right? So because they like having their 3 months summer vacations, they like their free healthcare and whatever other freebies they have. And they decided, we're just going to arm Ukraine, throw in some weapons, and hopefully it will, this war will weaken the Russian military and the Russian economy, which is none else than Lloyd Austin himself, the former Secretary of Defense who worked for Biden, said that publicly, right? He said the quiet part out loud. So they were using Ukrainians effectively as human shields to throw into Putin's meat grinder to protect the Europeans who did not want to pay for their own security. And reason number two, it's the massive wealth transfer, because all of the military industrial, apparatus, the Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, they've been profiting from this war by, providing these arms to Ukraine, to the point where we actually depleted our own weapons arsenal to very dangerous level in key systems, Javelin, Stingers, and 155 millimeter shells. And look at all this, and he's the realist. He understands and he sees that the real threat is really China, right? Russia, yes, Russia does have a plan, as I said, to defeat America, including on the battlefield, but only if America intervenes in Russia's sphere of influence, such as Ukraine, right? So if we were to put boots on the ground, Putin would go all the way to nuclear, just like Biden himself warned us about. Remember, he was talking about nuclear Armageddon and how serious, and then all of a sudden he did a 180 and he provided long-range missiles to Ukraine and gave them authorization to strike deep into Russia. Well, what that did is it canceled any kind of possible negotiations of peace, because it demonstrated to Putin that he was correct by invading Ukraine. He can't afford having the threat like that on his doorstep, just like we wouldn't allow Russia or China to get as close as Mexico or Canada.
Right.
And so those are the two top reasons. And then all of a sudden, these people, now that they see, right, and the media was greatly, it was assisting in that narrative. It was saying, rah, Ukraine should win. That victory was mathematically impossible. I was talking about it for 3 years on every single network, and at the risk of my, not being invited anymore. And at some point, they stopped inviting me because my analytic, it's not just my opinion, right? I do intelligence analysis, and I provide it at the unclassified level using the same tradecraft that I learned in the intelligence community. It's not just my opinion, but people will go on TV and they were just like, oh, and by the way, it's the same people who are on the board of these military-industrial complex, or they are paid by think tanks, the Brookings Institution and this and that, Carnegie. A lot of them are actually on foreign government's payroll, the Atlantic Council, right? And these people would go, and the mainstream media loves to invite these people on the on air, on TV, but they are not providing realistic analysis. They are providing the view that is sympathetic to Ukraine, so they effectively participated in the major deception, major scheme, major lie that the Biden administration concocted, lying to the American people that Ukraine could win, and defrauded us a $200 billion, giving it to Ukraine, out of which only 71, Zelensky himself said the quiet part out loud. He said, oh, I only got 71. Well, like President Trump during today's press conference, where's the rest of the money? Right? But that's not even the most dangerous part. The most dangerous part is that we have not enough weapons right now. If China were to invade Taiwan, and we have a responsibility that we placed on ourselves to defend, we would have no weapons because we are not on a wartime footing. Putin transitioned his military economy on a wartime footing 7 years prior to the invasion, right? I told that to NATO in Brussels. And so right now, the Russians' factories are working 24/7 in 3 shifts, right? And they're pumping out more missiles and more armaments in 1 month than the entire NATO alliance produces in 1 year. Think about that. And that is why President Trump came out, and he's forcing now the NATO alliance. And by the way, Germany, the richest country in Europe, they don't even pay 2%. Think about that. So that's why President Trump is saying, okay, enough is enough. Uncle Sam is not Uncle Sucker, or J.D. Vance said it, I guess. Start coughing up some cash here. If you're going to crow that Russia is about to invade a NATO country, which is another lie, by the way, because Putin is not suicidal. He's a very rational actor. The invading NATO, a NATO country would trigger Article 5. Yeah. So that's another lie that and so there's this massive deception. And we already know that, based on what Doge and Elon Musk are uncovering all the other lies. So this is another lie that unfortunately the mainstream media has not caught on to. That we're now $200 billion short, deep Russians and Ukrainians lost 100 million men. 50% of Ukraine is destroyed. Ukraine ceased to exist as an independent country because they depended on us. Zelensky says, "Oh, I'm not gonna agree to anything." Well, guess what? If we don't provide any money to them, his government collapses the very next day because not only we give them weaponry and we're paying them for including their government salaries, their health care. It's all on us. We are the suckers right now, the American people. And that's why we elected Trump, right? Because he's the only rational actor saying here, okay, why are we defending everyone else's freedom? What about our own freedom? What about our own people,
right.
Over here? It's enough.
Yeah. So, Rebecca, before we go, the question now becomes the meeting with Russia and U.S. and getting together in Saudi Arabia. People are like, well, Zelensky wasn't there. Okay. Well, what do you make of, in just a couple of minutes that we have left of the meeting that just took place? What do you think you're going to see now moving forward?
So first and foremost, Zelensky is irrelevant. The Russians would not negotiate with him because his term expired in May. And based on the Constitution, based on the Ukrainian Constitution, the Russian Constitution, they can't negotiate himself. And moreover, he's a con artist. Zelensky himself passed the law that prohibits him from negotiating with Putin. Okay, so not many people know that. The NATO allies that, again, are all up in arms, Macron is holding the emergency meeting. Why aren't they included? Well, what were they doing for 10 years, right? And why do we need to include them? Because neither Zelensky nor NATO allies, they're not the deciders here, using President Bush's term, right? They're not decision makers. Trump and Putin are. And so what's going to happen next is, unfortunately, like I said, we need to have very realistic expectations. Trump is an extremely talented and negotiator, but he inherited a mess right now. And so we need to give him time. We have no leverage. Putin is loving it sitting next to Trump and be seen as on par with the leader of the free world. They're milking it, incredibly. I listen to Russian media every day and listen to what Putin says to his own people. They are loving this because they're basically demonstrating, to us that they want to rub it in our nose and they want to humiliate us. They're showing y'all are idiots. You lost, $200 billion. Zelensky's a con artist. But he's going to drag this on, Putin will, until he gets every single thing, every single requirement out of us. And unfortunately, I'm concerned that President Trump is going to be exasperated with this. And, and of course, he's going to be blamed. What the Russians want is they want us to fight each other. Right. So they want Trump to fire his team because they're not going to make progress. So it's going to be, we need to give them time. These are heavyweights. President Trump appointed Mike Waltz, General Kellogg, whom I know personally, and Steve Witkoff. But they're talking with gangsters, right? Lavrov, he has 2 decades, of in the same role. Ushakov, Putin's personal, foreign policy advisor. Kirillov, who is the manager of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. They're going to be playing really hard ball. So let's give them time, see how it plays out, and keep our expectations reasonable. And President Trump is a realist, so he knows that he knows what the cards that he dealt with. It's not his war to lose. They already lost that war. The Biden, the liars, and the incompetent people, they're the ones who lost that war. They can't possibly be pinning it on Trump. He's just trying to save people, save Ukraine, and stop the bloodshed.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Rebecca, listen, it was great to talk to you again. Again, great to see you. All the best. God bless. And we will speak soon. And we'll maybe have you back when we can talk more about the results of all of this and see where it goes. Okay? We'll speak soon.
Okay, and people, please check out my book, Putin's Playbook. It tells you everything there is to know about how Putin thinks, how Russia fights. So I appreciate it. God bless everybody. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll see you soon. That's Rebecca Koffler joining us today on Florida's Voice. Yes, Putin's Playbook. You can get it anywhere you buy books. You can check that out. And yeah, she knows what she's talking about, and she knows the details. And yep, so